Hello my dear VR gaming friends. I present you today's video in an unusual way. Usually I publish my videos in German language on my channel. Today I make an exception. And why I do this you will learn shortly. Let me begin by reading to you from a letter written in 1995. Future game programmer, thank you for your interest in becoming a game programmer. Ken and Roberta are very busy, as you can well imagine, so they passed your letter on to me. I hope the following information helps you in your future plans. In order to be successful in the field of computer programming, we recommend a Bachelor of Science in Computer Science or Master of Science in Computer Science. Yada 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 yada. Sierra Online was founded by Ken and Roberta Williams. Ken is a brilliant programmer and Roberta is one of our top game designers. Yada yada yada. We hope this has been helpful and good luck on all of your future plans. Sierra Customer Support. Well, I received this letter in June 1995 from Sierra Online Customer Support in response to my request by letter if they could give me any tips on how to become a game designer. That's what I call fan service. Until its fall, Sierra Online was indeed something special, and that was due in large part to its owners Ken and Roberta Williams. Well, the rest is history. I actually designed levels for some games in the late 90s as a modder, but in the end I became what I never wanted to become, a lawyer. I don't want to bore you too much right now, but part of this channel is my personal gaming history, and today's video is a good opportunity to take a little trip down the memory lane. Christmas 1988, I played my first computer game, King's Quest Part 1, Quest for the Crown by Sierra Online, written and designed by the one and only Roberta Williams and programmed by the ambitious Ken Williams. At that time, as a young teenager, I wanted to have my own computer to play games, but my parents were against it for a long time. My friends were all playing on a cool Commodore 64 at that time. I loved the cool graphics and the great sound of Commodore's consumer flagship. And when I finally got a computer as a present for Christmas, my joy was great. At first, what followed was a big disappointment. My parents had given me a Schneider 28680 with a monochrome monitor. I quickly realized that this PC with MS-DOS and PC speaker was not a cool home computer. There were no action games like I knew from my friends. Instead, I spent the next few weeks with an English dictionary at the keyboard trying to solve my first adventure game with a text parser. For someone like me, a young student who barely knew English, the joy was very limited at first. Regardless, adventure game series like the King's Quest series, Police Quest, Space Quest, Leisure Suit Larry, yeah, they managed to captivate me with exciting, sometimes funny, interactive stories. A practical side effect was that I was motivated to learn English besides school. As you can see, I'm a fan of the old adventure school. Sierra will always have a special place in my gamer heart. If you're interested in the turbulent history of Sierra Online, one of the most influential adventure game software companies of the 80s and 90s, I can recommend the book Not All Fairy Tales Have Happy Endings, published by Ken Williams in 2021, and the book The Sierra Adventure by Sean Mills. These are two super exciting books about the history of Sierra Online. Now, when Ken Williams announced, together with Marcus Mera, an ex-jewelry designer, on Facebook last year that he was planning to publish his own game again after all these years, well, I, like many other of his old fans, initially thought that was a joke. The Williams had been off the grid for decades. Other Sierra Online legends like L-Law, Jane Jensen and the Coles, they made occasional appearances over the years with remakes or Kickstarter campaigns, but not the Williams. Now, however, in 2020 and 2021, Ken got bored in Corona lockdown. That's at least his story. He started to work with Unity Engine for fun. I will spare you now all the details, it's been reported enough elsewhere. To make a long story short, what started as a fun project ended up in a reboot of the forefather of all adventure games, Colossal Cave, a text adventure originally programmed in the 1970s for a mainframe computer. Today I have the honor to review Colossal Cave 3D, reimagined by Roberta Williams for the Meta Quest 2 in VR. And yes, you heard right, Roberta is also back in the game. When she realized that Ken was actually serious, she couldn't stand it, worried about her good family name, and joined in on the game design process. In the end, a team of nearly 20 creatives now has worked under Cygnus Entertainment label to remake Colossal Cave in VR. Looking at Sierra's history, the switch over to VR is, at least for me, only logical. All in all, VR is still a huge field of experimentation, especially when it comes to design ideas. Sierra was instrumental in the shaping of technical development of computer games in the 80s and 90s in terms of graphics, sound and user interface design. A simple new point-and-click adventure, well, would probably have been quickly forgotten apart from a bit of nostalgia. So the Colossal Cave reboot in VR offers the chance to once again deliver something special. And so I dedicate this review video to the Williams in English language as a thank you for the many phoned adventure game memories from my youth. But be warned, even though I'm an old Sierra fanboy, my judgment will be merciless. Basically, I'm the perfect candidate. I've actually played thousands of computer games, and that includes all of Sierra's adventure titles, and I've been following developments in VR gaming for close to 9 years now, and I played or at least looked into currently all existing VR game titles. But I've never played Colossal Cave, the original text adventure. That means I don't know the story. So I'm all the more excited to see how Roberta has reinterpreted this old game in VR. I really hope that you didn't fuck this one up, Roberta. Somehow I think you have been under quite a lot of pressure lately. And now, without any further delay, off we go into the world of Colossal Cave by Cygnus Entertainment. And with that, I welcome you to the game in VR. To be clear, this video is not a let's play, but a review video of the VR version of the game. It's been almost 30 years since I've played a Roberta Williams game. For me, this is a special moment that I would like to capture before I move over to review mode. So this is my very first reaction to the game.
You are standing at the end of a road before a small brick building. Around you is a forest. A small stream flows out of the building and down a gully.
Okay. We've arrived. And I can move freely around, doing snap turns, as it said, with the right controller. Yeah, and one thing I notice instantly is that the graphics somehow look outdated. I'm sorry to say that, but I think that's the truth. This is not Red Matter. This is not Lone Echo or anything you can compare to these games. But, and that's the big but, it somehow has an atmosphere. There's some nice ambient sound, and there's an owl. There's an owl. And Yeah, we all know we love oats, don't we? The movement is very slow. Slower than in Half-Life Alyx. So there's the owl. Hi.
A large owl seems to be watching you.
So, up at the top I saw a house. So let's check that. And I wish I could move faster.
The door is closed.
Oh, cool. I already got 27 points and I have no clue for what. Ah, as I've just learned, if you push the grab button on the right controller, you can cycle between different cursor commands. And my guess is I will use now the hand. Yes. Yeah, I like that. I really like that because this is, yeah, it's a mixture of old point and click and somehow a solution in VR how to yeah, steer and use the game controls. It's really nice. And yeah, there's the key. There is the key.
There are some keys on the ground here.
I'm walking. Yes, indeed, I'm walking. Very slow, I'm walking. La 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 la. I wish I could move a little faster. La 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 la. But maybe we get a cool patch with an update that makes me move faster in VR. Hi, Cedric. Okay, let's open the gate.
The grate is locked.
Okay. So let's have a look at the map, which can be opened with by pressing the X button. You get obviously passing directions, as it seems. So yeah, this is the well house. Here's the old. Okay. So
Set of keys.
let's use the keys.
Set of keys.
Use. Yeah, that's cool.
You have unlocked the grate.
Okay, I think we are entering the cave. Okay. After this brief, somewhat reserved impression, let's switch to review mode while I show you some VR footage. Stay tuned until the end because I have a surprise for you regarding the rating. To understand what Colossal Cave 3D is all about, I first need to give you some background information. Text adventure means you type a command which is interpreted by a so-called parser. The actual story or actions that are triggered by commands are told in text. So, in the broadest sense, you are playing an interactive book.
A cheerful little bird is sitting here singing.
For this very reason, many adventure gamers consider the Colossal Cave adventure as the grandfather of adventure computer gaming. The developers Will Crowther and Dan Woods allowed modifications and further developments of their game in the following decades. And so, over the past 40 years, a small but mighty fanbase has grown that continues to fly the flag for Colossal Cave. For Roberta, Colossal Cave was her first computer game and it strongly influenced her development as a game designer. So this late work of hers and Ken's is probably a late homage to the game that launched her career in the 70s. And that brings me to the gameplay aspect. As I now know, Colossal Cave 3D is essentially the same as the original game with its puzzles, flow and world design, only in 3D. I think that's a smart decision on one hand and a bit cowardly on the other. because this way the design performance of Roberta, apart from the visualization, can practically not be rated. Not only are their original texts translated into images, they are even recited. Thus, Colossal Cave is not a new game, but only some kind of remaster, another variant that fits into the series of already existing versions of Colossal Cave. In terms of gameplay, your task is to find a way through the cave maze by solving mini-quests and collecting treasures. You will then receive points for your achievements. The game has some random moments, which by the way can end deadly, and runs not immediately apparent to the player in rounds. Each action and a room change costs you 1 action point. After 3000 actions at the latest, the game is over. Fortunately, saving is possible everywhere. This is also necessary because Colossal Cave is a game in which you can die like in any classic Sierra adventure game. And it's a pretty big game, even if it doesn't seem like that at first. After you have died, you can load a save game or revive yourself with a point deduction. For me, it's always been a great fun in Sierra games to find out how many different ways you can make your game character die. And so here too, I threw myself into the abyss at the first available opportunity. There is an automap function that, unlike in the original, makes adventure life a little easier for you. It serves as a rough orientation, so a small improvement in terms of comfort for the player in comparison to the original. Like in most classic adventure games, you have to think around corners or simply try things out. Unfortunately, the puzzles didn't always seem logical to me. On the other hand, it was fun to play a game where not everything is presented in a logical and bite-sized way. While the initial puzzles are easy, they quickly become more difficult as the game progresses. Colossal Cave is not an easy game. It is something for puzzle freaks and those who are not always looking for a logical solution. If you get stuck, you can take, from my understanding, advantage of tips under point deduction.
If you're trying to deal with the snake, I am prepared to give you a hint, but it will cost you 2 points.
I found the inventory management to be a bit of a nuisance. You can't carry around as much as you want, like in old adventures. However, you can see the items on the map when you put them down, which adds another strategic or puzzle aspect to the game. You can store your treasures in the house at the beginning, and a funny teleport function saves you at least part of the way. Unfortunately, you move very slowly, especially in VR, which makes the back and forth very time consuming and annoying at times. At the end there is one goal, reaching the maximum of 350 points, and at least in this aspect the old gameplay scored with me. I stayed motivated and always wanted to find the perfect solution. After all, Roberta managed to design an atmosphere in the game heavily limited by its original design mechanics that makes you want to go on a journey of discovery. However, so far I'm not keen on replaying the game several times. Now, let's move on to the graphics of the MetaQuest 2 VR version. I would describe the graphics as functional at best. It's not overall pretty. And in VR on the MetaQuest 2, textures look slightly washed out and not as sharp as they could be. Slow adventure games like Remaster 2 have shown on the Quest 2 how good a standalone VR game can look. Look at those ugly 2005 fog effects or the water. Ugh. Also, most animations, if existed at all, look wooden. I would have also liked to see a bit more graphical variety in the cave system. I had the impression that Cygnus used a lot of stock graphics. The game doesn't feature any unique art style. Many VR indie game developers get around the technical limitations of the Quest by developing in a very unique art style, and they do this actually in a short time. You just need good coders and creative artists. Something like that would have been beneficial for Colossal Cave as well. After all, the visual interpretation is supposed to be the remaster's innovation to the original. It is not really. In short, this game is not a beauty. You should not make a purchase decision because of the graphics. The sound scored more points with me than the graphics. The narrator who reads the original text of the text adventure to you has a great voice. He adds a lot to the mood. In addition, the sound design is basically good. People always underestimate how much good sound design contributes to immersion in VR. There isn't a lot of music and there aren't overly many sound effects, but the few music passages are appropriate and the effects sound okay. I would have liked to hear more 3D effects in VR. Either way, the narrator pushed the sound score up quite a bit.
You're in the Hall of the Mountain King, with passages off in 5 directions.
The game's story, well, while you play, it's not really there. On the other hand, it is. There is a little bit of background story, but mainly it's about the cave's discovery. And here the game manages through its narration to keep an adventure player like me entertained at least for one playthrough. All in all though, I would have liked Roberta to forge a much more complex plot around the game, because that's what she's known for, that's her great strength. On the other hand, that wouldn't have been true to the original. In the end though, this antagonism leaves me as a player with an empty feeling. The VR interface worked for me most of the time well. Sometimes it's a bit clunky. The controls in VR are easy to learn and the comfort mode really makes the game accessible to everyone, especially to people who suffer from motion sickness. I quite liked the point-and-click principle. It was something fresh and new in a VR game, even if it is more or less a copy of the 90s Sierra adventure game controls. What I found extremely annoying as a VR veteran was the running speed. A speed update should be definitely offered as an option in a patch. The game is so goddamn slow. It behaves like a game made only for old people that more often suffer from motion sickness than younger people. And that brings me to my last point, immersion. Here I'm a little torn. For me VR wins especially when the player gets a sense of presence in VR. I had a hard time with that in Colossal Cave. You feel like you are floating through the cave's world and the controllers act for you more or less like a steering wheel or joystick. As a result, I didn't feel immersed at all in the game. Yes, there is the 3D virtual effect, but I always felt like an observer. That is VR from the year 2015. Following straight the point-and-click idea, you don't have virtual hands to modify items or to solve puzzles. I wonder how it would have felt if they added virtual hands to the game. And that brings me to my final, possibly somewhat unusual review. I will give you 2 target group-oriented game ratings. Rating number 1 is aimed at the modern VR gamer, and rating number 2 at the old adventure gamers among you, who are either VR affine or have the desire to try out VR. Let's start with the graphics. The graphics of Colossal Cave are not ugly, but nothing special either. The game takes place mostly in an underground cave complex, and I would have liked to see a more spectacular presentation. For me, as an experienced VR gamer, there was virtually no aha effect or "oh, that looks nice." The character animations of the dwarfs, for example, seem totally wooden. As I understand it, the main goal of the remaster was the graphical interpretation according to Roberta's imagination. That's why I, being a modern VR gamer, can give the game only 60% for the graphics. For someone who hasn't seen that much in VR, who doesn't care a lot about presentation as such, Cygnus effort might be enough, so I give it a 65%. Let's move on to the sound rating. Like I said, the sound design is better than the graphics. It adds a lot to the mood and the investment in the narrator has done the game a lot of good. I would have liked better 3D audio effects, but it was good enough for 65% for the modern VR gamer and 72% for the classic adventure gamer. Unfortunately, there is not much of a driving background story. The puzzles are essentially the elements that carry the game. Roberta has kept very close to the original here. You have to keep in mind that this is a variant of the game from the 70s. 45% for the modern VR gamer who regularly gets good stories presented in indie titles as well. For the 80s adventure veterans among you who love puzzles, beating this game and gaining max points is possibly enough. Therefore 65% for the classic adventure gamer. This story doesn't have to be crucial for the modern VR player. VR offers so many opportunities to try out completely new game design concepts with puzzles and physical manipulations. Unfortunately, Roberta did not make use of that and thus misses design opportunities. She simply remains true to the original of the 70s. As an experienced VR player, it didn't click for me. Sorry, I can give you for that only 45%. On the other hand, the classic adventurers among you will possibly love that. It's all about, well, not always logical old school puzzles. So, for staying true to the granddaddy of adventure games, I give this title 82%. The VR interface is good. After playing so many titles with virtual presence that use the touch controllers as virtual hands, it was interesting to use the touch controllers in an old school point-and-click style control scheme. I think this decision makes the game accessible to a very wide audience. Modern VR gamers will nevertheless wonder whether control with virtual hands would not have been good for some of the puzzles. And pulling out items out of the inventory, that would have been much more immersive. Also, people who will try out VR for the first time with this game won't learn about the wonders of virtual hands. So 71% for the modern VR gamer and 80% for the classic adventurer. And that brings us to the last rating, immersion. Here, unfortunately, the game loses again. You are more the observer than the actor in this world. Moreover, most of the time it seemed to me as if I were floating through the rooms. I didn't really have a sense of presence, unlike in a game like Half-Life Alyx or Red Matter. Personally, I think if an experienced VR game developer had picked up Ken and Roberta, equipped them technically and gave them better guidance, this game could have become really a great immersive VR title. In the end, as a modern VR gamer, I give the immersion factor 55%. As a classic adventure gamer, 71%. And that brings me to the final overall rating. To answer the question, did Roberta deliver? Right away, yes, she delivered what she promised, a graphic reinterpretation of the original game. Is it a beauty? No, certainly not. Is it fun for puzzle fans? Yes. Does it stay true to the original as much as possible? Yes. Is it a game on the cutting edge of technology? For goodness sake, no. You see, there are two hearts beating in my chest and it is tearing me apart because it's Roberta. I will make this short and sweet. The game is not attractive for modern VR gamers, especially for a price of nearly $40. In the overall rating, I give the game 59%. If you are in need of a gaming history lesson, play it. Classic adventure gamers, however, can probably live with the negative points I've just mentioned and are still attracted to the puzzles. So from that perspective, I give the game overall 72%. God damn it, Roberta, you sleeping giant, wake up! Yes, I've even read Farewell to Tara. You can still tell stories. The old spirit is still there. Yes, I know it was probably exhausting, the sprint like in old times, but it was just your warm-up run. Now it's time for you to take the team, find yourself a really great VR partner, and then design your VR Magnus Opus and tell us a great story. Get together with Sony or Microsoft to publish something great and meaningful. Or talk to Gabe, he's probably crazy enough to sponsor you and give you the resources if you push it a lot further. And I promise you one thing, if you have the right tech at your hands, you won't feel sick. Motion sickness for most people comes from poor technique or poor motion design. VR is the future of storytelling, even if not everyone has understood that yet. So that was my little motivational speech. Maybe you will never hear or see that either, but at least I've tried. So my dear VR enthusiasts, thank you for watching. Give this video a like if you liked it, leave a subscribe, and you will see me in my next video. Also, feel free to leave me a comment. What connects you with Colossal Cave? What are your memories? And what do you think about the reinterpretation of Roberta Williams? Thanks and see me in the next video.